So some of the benefits I've heard to make an LLC is just the limited liability, like you protect your assets. If I like rent a small building and have an LLC and someone sues me, like I don't lose my house or something. Is there any like misconceptions there?
There is, and the LLC stands for Limited Liability Company. It doesn't stand for No Liability Company, and same thing with a corporation. So there is potential liability, and what I mean by that is, let's just talk about the corporation first. So let's talk about a much bigger example. Let's just say we're talking about Amazon. So if I'm an investor in Amazon, I put $10,000. If I buy $10,000 of Amazon stock, and let's say Amazon for some reason gets sued, there's a massive, let's say, class action lawsuit or some kind of lawsuit because of something happened and a bunch of people got hurt or maybe injured or died, whatever the case may be, huge lawsuit. Here again, Amazon's not going to go bankrupt because of that. But let's just say there was the potential for Amazon to go broke because they couldn't pay all their claims and some kind of massive lawsuit. Now they're going to say, okay, well, we want to go after their next if the lawsuit and the plaintiff's attorneys can prove that there was negligence on behalf of the management, the officers, the directors, the managers of the company, they can then go after and sue those individual managers for that negligence and go after them personally. But me as an investor, only thing I'm out is going to be my $10,000 investment into Amazon. Still a lot of money. I don't want to lose it, but my personal assets aren't at risk by me being an owner. So basically the same thing is true with an LLC. So if you're a manager, an officer, director in an LLC, you have risk. Now, and I haven't checked on this recently, so the Florida Supreme Court may have ruled something differently recently, but I know as of around in 2008, the Florida Supreme Court ruled that a single member LLC did not give you a whole lot of asset protection. So if you're going to be in business and you're looking at LLC or corporation, you're a single member, you may want to go with the corporation because it could potentially give you more asset protection. So
what does that do for you for taxes?
Really, as I mentioned earlier, having the corporation, having the LLC gives you more flexibility in choosing your taxation structure. And I say that I've only seen once or twice where someone really needed to have that flexibility to go back and I'll say flip-flop on their taxation structures after a couple of years, but very, 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 very rare. So if I was going to be in a business where I was worried about where I had a lot of potential risk. As in a business, let's say I had a delivery business, or I had a business with a big fleet on the road. I'm the only owner. I would probably consider being a corporation over an LLC for asset protection reasons. Now, if you're in a multi-member LLC, you do get that protection. I guess the corporate veil is what it's called, but a single-member LLC, unless the Florida Supreme Court has done something to change that recently. They've kind of limited or done away with any kind of liability protection for single-member LLC. So just keep that in mind. Everybody LLCs are the new. They've been around for at least probably 25 years, but everybody's going towards an LLC. But just put some thought into why you're doing it. Think about look at what kind of business you're in, what kind of risks. Kind of try to. Quantify the potential risks you have in business and say, okay, yeah, I'm in the kind of business that I really don't have any risk, and if I do, it's going to be minimal. Like for instance, us here at the CPA firm, we have risks, but we're not. If we do someone's tax return wrong, we just got to go back and amend it, maybe pay some fees and interest and whatever. But if I had a business where I had a fleet on the road, a delivery business, maybe some other kind of business that there was high risk and in a very litigious environment, I would consider more of a corporation as opposed to an LLC, especially if I'm in business by myself.
Now, I've heard that instead of people owning businesses, businesses can own businesses. So what if like one person and then 5 businesses own one LLC? Is that still an individual, or is that?
No, so don't think of ownership as being individuals or businesses. Think of it as members.
Yeah.
So a member in an LLC can be an individual or another business or a trust. So don't think of the ownership as being human. Think of it as just somebody some person or some entity owning a piece of the LLC.
So what if there's one guy who owns 2 businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's all set up in a manner to where there's technically 3 members in each one of those businesses, but it's just one guy.
So one guy. So there's
Bear with me.
So the businesses all own part of each other.
Yeah, it's just one guy, but it's.
I'll say from a technical standpoint, you do have a multi-member LLC. From a I'm in, just for disclosure, I'm not an attorney, I'm not giving out legal advice, but I would say that there's probably going to be, there probably is some case law out there on this already. I have no idea, because this is not, I'm not looking to I'm not here again, I'm not an attorney, but there may be some case law about something what you just mentioned. But at that point, I would definitely get with your attorney. If you have one, if you don't have one, get with one to help you answer that specific question.
Scary idea for me to have. You're like, well, yeah, seek legal help if you're doing stuff like that. We can call Brian Brybag. We can get him on the phone right now.
There you go.
And see what he says. Just speaking of kind of asset protection, you brought up Amazon. Mm-hmm. I can verify if it's true in Google, but from what I understand, my friends work at USAA. I have a lot of friends that work for that company. Mm-hmm. And apparently, like, every bit of land that Amazon is built on mm-hmm. is owned by USAA. Like, every plot of land underneath Amazon, every Amazon location is owned by USAA. Is there anything kind of like asset protection and something like that? Like, do you think there's anything going on? Any benefit to something like that?
So what happens a lot of times is, so Amazon has had been on a massive real estate, I'll say, buying binge or leasing binge or a combination of both. And so, basically these large insurance companies, especially ones that write life insurance, they basically are annuities, and both those, if they're in the life and annuity business, they're basically need lots and lots of cash on hand, because they're basically, especially like in life insurance, you're taking these premiums in, and you're basically, the insurance company is, they want you to outlive your insurance policy. They get to keep all those premiums. That's how they make money. And so with an annuity, they want to make sure that the annuity company, the insurance company that is backing your annuity, wants to make sure that they've given you some kind of if they've given you a guaranteed rate of return, they need to make sure that they earn enough money to guarantee that rate of return and not run out of their own money. So, with that being said, companies like USAA and other large insurance companies have huge reserves they have to keep, and they need to make money on those reserves. And so, industrial real estate right now is a very hot sector in America, with more and more people wanting to buy stuff online. It's becoming, it's so much easier to buy things online than it was 20 years ago. So online shopping is becoming, a big thing, and getting the delivery point closer and closer to the consumer is becoming a big thing as well. So you buy something at 8 o'clock in the morning, you may have it that day, depending on what it is, depending upon how close you are to a distribution center for someone like an Amazon.
That's the only way I buy. I only buy stuff I can get tomorrow.
Yeah, so it's that industrial warehouse and industrial distribution sector for the comes real estate is very hot. So a company like USAA and other insurance companies would be looking to make an investment into that real estate, and then have a company like Amazon, who is definitely a credit-worthy tenant, sign a long-term lease. Now USAA or whoever else knows they have a fixed income stream coming in that they can put their reserves into. And a lot of your companies are, here in the U.S. And around the world, interest rates have gone down ever since the Great Recession back in 2008. Interest rates have been cheap the last 15 years. We've been living on cheap money. And so with that, as we all know, if you put money in the bank, you get nothing. Basically next to nothing unless you tie the money up for a long period of time. Same thing with bonds. Bonds are returning very low interest rates right now, and the risk with bonds is if interest rates start to go back up, your bond values go down. So these companies, big insurance companies, big pension funds, are looking for a place to park their money, that they get a good, steady, consistent rate of return with the chance for some appreciation in the industrial real estate sector. Multifamily has provided that to them. So that's why you're seeing, companies like Amazon partner with USAA and others, because Amazon, some of these large public traded companies, when they're in fast growth mode, they need to keep that long-term debt off their balance sheet. and invest in assets that provide a quicker rate of return. Amazon can make more money by investing in systems, by investing in infrastructure in terms of technology, distribution software, distribution processes, all the trucks and vans to distribute. That's going to give them a greater rate of return than tying up billions and billions of dollars in commercial real estate when they've got people that are anxious to do that for them. So they only got so much cash, so much borrowing power, and they've got to use it, deploy it in the most efficient means possible. And so you're seeing a lot of companies do that. They have other companies that invest in the real estate, and they invest in all the other assets. So, and I'm speaking generally, of course, we're not talking specific, but that's just what we've been seeing over the last 10 to 15 years. I don't know if I answered your question. I got a long answer, but
yeah, I'm like, well, I do my best, man. I have ADHD, so it's like, this is really interesting. I think I got all of it though. The entire time you were talking, I was thinking about like this is really cool for like the major, like huge, like Fortune 500 companies and their kind of moves. Then I think about small businesses, like, when people are doing things to invest in their systems or to make their money work for them. Just what are some things you think that small businesses can be doing similar to that? Like, well, how can we be smarter with our money from a business standpoint?
I think a lot of people can emulate these bigger companies to a certain degree, meaning, there's a lot more investors are willing to, like, I'll put myself as a category. If someone came to me and said, hey, I need you to spend, $1 million to build me a building to operate my business out of, and it would be a building like at least to anybody, be a general purpose type building, I'd be more inclined to do that than say, hey, can I borrow $500,000 to buy some computers, and I want to develop some software, and I want to buy this infrastructure. The real estate is a tangible asset. I know that I can get it leased back up and keep my cash flow going. If I'm buying computers and other kinds of equipment that's depreciable type equipment, I have a much greater risk. So I think that businesses, when they're in growth mode, have to be smart about they only have so much capital to deploy, and they may not want to lease their facility, but they may have to because they only got so much capital to go around. Whether you're big or small, when you're in hyper growth mode or even some kind of a steady growth mode, you may have to make those decisions. And here again, we all know that investing in real estate, especially if you buy it right and it's the right kind of real estate and is going to be desirable based on industry trends, great investment. But you may not have enough capital to go around, so you got to you have to defer that real estate investment 3, 5, 10 years down the road to when you actually have enough capital. What you can do, though, is you can write up your lease if your landlord's agreeable, where you have an option to buy. So if you're wishing you could acquire a piece of property, but you're short on capital, maybe write something up in your lease to where your landlord will be willing to sell you the building at some kind of agreed upon number in the future, maybe fair market value, whatever the case may be. But if you can't afford it to buy it today, I would at least try to get into a lease agreement where you can have the option to buy it.
The difference between most CPAs around here is that you do, commercial and mostly commercial, but residential real estate. And, a question I would have for you right now is some friends of mine selling a unique piece of property out in South Tampa. And I think they're concerned about the $100,000 in capital gains tax that's estimated for them to pay in selling this property. And they were asking me some questions, like they heard that there's something out there like the one time in your life you're able to like sell a piece of property and not have to pay capital gains. Then they said that, and the first thing I thought was, if I even ask you this, you're probably going to tell me it's fairy tale. Yeah, and so is that?
Well, no, it's not. It's true. So it's kind of true. So there used to be let's back up. So yeah, I'm a realtor. I spend my time focused on commercial and business brokering. I've got a business partner. His name is Anthony Canaris, great guy. And both of us have our licenses over at Berkshire Hathaway. And Anthony, there's 4 or 5 other people on the team besides Anthony and I, and they all focus on residential and commercial. And I spend my time in larger commercial and business brokering. So we're a very well-rounded team that can handle any real estate transactions for those that are listening. But to your question, there used to be, back late 90s, if you kept selling your personal residence, and you could keep selling your personal residence as long as you kept buying a more and more expensive residence, you keep deferring the gain, and then when you turn 55, you can take it's called a one-time exclusion, and you could exclude $125,000 from the gain on sale of that residence, not paying tax on it. I want to say sometime in the late 90s, Congress passed a new law that said basically every 2 years you can sell your home as a married couple. So, or if you're single, you can sell your home every 2 years. If you're married, you can have a $500,000 gain every 2 years. If you're single, a $250,000 gain. So you're married, every 2 years you can make $500,000 in tax-free profit on the sale of your primary residence.
Dude, I thought that was only like 125 per. I thought the max was quarter. So it goes up to $500,000 every 2 years.
Every 2 years, yep.
As long as I didn't pay any capital gains in my house when I sold it.
As long as it's your primary residence 2 out of the last 5 years, you do qualify for that. One other thing too is people talk about, when they talk about deferring gain or not paying any tax, people are, thinking about 1031 exchanges or like-kind exchanges or tax-free exchanges. All mean the same thing. 1031s, the revenue code that addresses that transaction. And, the capital gains tax has been around since about 1940, 1941, 42, something like that. So at this point, capital gains has been around for 80 years. Right now, the capital gains tax is the lowest it's been. It's the second lowest point it's been in history. So, and it was even lower back about 10 years ago. So when Bush Jr., I'll call him, came in office in 2000. We were coming out of the dot-com bubble, and bubble burst. And then as that started to kind of gain its traction again, then we had 9/11. So we had about 2.5 years there. We had a pretty good downturn in business and in the economy. So there was quite a bit of legislation that got passed to boost the economy with tax breaks, and capital gains taxes was one of them. So that's when the tax rate went on long-term capital gains went from 28% down to 15%. Now I'll say about 10 years ago, it's up to 20% now on long-term capital gains. So still really low tax rate on capital gains. So we've been encouraging our clients for the last 20 years. For the most part, they've just been paying the tax, starting out with a fresh, clean basis going forward. And this is just my opinion, but a lot of other people in this industry share the same opinion that right now we're $30 trillion or more in debt as a country. Tax rates are going to have to go up, and they're going to go from people that can afford to pay. And people that make money or have big income hits like this are the ones that can actually afford to pay. So my belief is that it's better to go ahead and pay the tax today at a lower rate than to pay it and kicking that tax can down the road at some point in the future. Now that's not the case for everybody out there. Everybody's situation is different, but for most people, that would be something that they should consider.
Yeah, I would imagine it's easier to tax like the sale of assets, than trying to chase, billion-dollar companies and billionaires, trying to get them to pay some astronomical number. That's probably not the solution. Probably pretty consistently is probably just taxing the assets as they're being sold, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And here again, it's the people that have those hundreds of millions or billions of dollars that you're talking about. A lot of those have them tied up in companies that they've started. We could talk about Jeff Bezos at Amazon, Elon Musk, Tesla, Bill Gates, Microsoft. Especially Microsoft, been around since the 80s. The basis that Bill Gates has in his Microsoft stock is just probably next to nothing. And he's given quite a bit of it away, to charity, and so his basis is next to nothing. And getting him to trying to do, like they were talking about, they being Congress, we're going to do this billionaires tax, where they're going to basically tax people on their unearned income from on their stock. Well, how can you take money from people who haven't generated a profit yet and tax them on it? So to your point, it's going to be a whole lot easier to take people that are actually selling something. Now they have the liquidity to actually pay the tax.
Right. It's
going to be a lot easier to hit them than it is for somebody that's sitting on huge gains, but they still own the assets. They don't have the cash; you just get the assets. It's going to be more and more difficult to tax them than it is folks that actually have cash.
Yeah, they're not cash rich. So.
Yeah, you heard the expression "can't get blood out of a turnip." So that's the.
Never heard that.
You ever heard that?
No.
That's because you're too young to hear those kind of things.
Too young. I don't even. I'll be honest. I've heard the .com bubble a lot of times in my life, and I'm 35. I'm like, man, I'm really not sure what the .com bubble is. I mean, like, there's something a crash in the 90s.
Happened. So basically, coming out of the early to mid 90s, the internet was invented, if you will. It just came about.
The World Wide Web, probably.
What's that?
The World Wide Web.
The World Wide Web. Yep.
Yeah. Not the internet.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
That too. So that came into existence, and there became a whole new way of transacting business and sharing information. And so everybody, email that came about. And so everybody was going out buying new computers and buying new software and everything else and hardware to basically be up with technology, because technology at that point began to change rapidly. So, and then you had the Y2K, all the computers are going to crash and the world's going to go back into the Stone Ages, and the planes are going to fall out of the sky and everything else. So it's going to be chaos and pandemonium. So all that led to a massive increase in expenditure to upgrade technology. Y2K rolled around, everything was fine. The planes didn't follow the sky, satellites didn't follow the sky. We didn't. We got the next day and functioned.
Who profited during Y2K? Who made the most money during Y2K?
That's a good question. But so those two things right there were, in my opinion, the contributing factors that led to the dot-com bubble. And people were, the dot-com, the internet, World Wide Web, a whole new brand new way of doing business. And people were just, all these startups were coming about. People were just pouring money into them. After Y2K happened, everybody really backed off on their technological investments. Dot-com bubble burst.
The next bubble was real estate in 08, right?
The bubble burst in 08, but it was building before then. That's.
Wasn't there one in the 80s too? A big burst in the 80s?
Yeah, I don't know exactly when it was. I know that after there was some major tax legislation it was 1988. So they used to have some very aggressive, either 87 or 88. They had some very aggressive depreciation rates for rental property, and they basically doubled those. Basically, I want to say that I think residential was 12 or 15 years, commercial was 15 or 20, and they basically doubled those lives. So, the quick write-off people were taking in depreciation, basically people were like, well, I'm not getting all the tax break I was getting in real estate. So real estate became a little out of favor for a while because it, still was increasing in value. If there was a little bit of bubble, values went down. But the people that were buying real estate for the tax breaks basically weren't near as good. So people weren't looking at this as an asset class to invest in. So real estate always typically rebounds, but the reason people were getting out of it or not buying it was because of the change in the tax code.
Interesting. So like every decade there appears to be like this.
It varies.
Towards the end of the decade too.
It just varies. There was another recession, real estate recession in the early 90s. We had the Persian Gulf War, and that kind of created a little bit of recession then. And it wasn't a deep recession, but it was I remember, but it was still a recession. And then we had the dot-com bubble, then we had the housing bubble, and now we're having the whatever kind of situation this is. I don't know if this really is a bubble or lack of leadership, but I don't want to get political. But and what we're going through here right now is, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, but I think it's a lack of leadership and bad policy that's got us where we're at today. And I think there was somewhat of a bubble. And here again, leadership aside, we came out of we got all this lockdowns and shutdowns, only supply chain issues. Doesn't matter who'd have been in charge, it probably would have some impact on the economy. Would it last as long? I don't know, but that is going to have an impact. You can't shut the world down, to some degree, and some longer than others without having an impact on supply chain. So that definitely led to all the stimulus money got pumped in the economy. People can't travel, so they're sitting on the couch spending, for fewer and fewer goods. So all that led to where we're at today. So,
which is crazy because just the first few, the first half of 2020 was record-breaking numbers for the top 100, Fortune 100 companies. From online sales standpoint, we're breaking records. Apparently, if I remember correctly, there's major spending across the board, even though no one was working.
Yeah, so COVID shut everything down mid-March 2020. So I don't know when I know end of 2020. I know I'm looking at stock prices only, not looking at so much spending habits. But stock prices definitely started peaking in the 20s. All of 2021, things were up for the most part. I should say all of 2021. Things were really good in 2021, and now things have definitely pulled back. And supposedly we're in a technical recession. There's some debate on what a recession is in terms of the definition, but historically, 2 quarters of declining GDP is being termed a recession. So, is that the new definition going forward? I don't know. Remains to be seen.
It was 2021.
So I think most people will probably feel like, you ask most people, do you feel like you're in a recession when gas is probably double what it was? Food prices have shot way up. Everything is up across the board. What do you feel like as a listener, you across the table from me? What do you feel? Do you feel like you're in a recession? You know?
Do I feel like it?
Yeah.
To be honest, in my business, just, doing marketing, in the beginning of 2020, I felt it as soon as people panicked. I believe I was doing mostly marketing for solar in the first quarter of 2020. And then as soon as they pulled salespeople from the streets, and as soon as they shut down the foot soldiers of the small businesses, the first thing everyone cut was like their marketing. They stopped advertising. They stopped marketing. Their employees went home. They boarded up their windows, and my income went straight to zero, so but now, do I feel like we're in a recession right now? Not necessarily. I feel like people are willing to pay when they pay their bills on time. So
it'd be interesting to see what happens when we get through. I don't really. I know I'm paying more for gas, though I'm paying more for food and different things like that. But I'd be interested to see when we get past the summertime. People probably have already committed to taking vacations, and they're going to, the kids are out of school. They're going to spend that money to have a great summer vacation with the kids and make those memories. But it'd be interesting to see where we're at once we get past, I'll say, back to school. I got to buy back to school clothes. Once we get past August, it'd be interesting to see what the spending looks like then. What does the consumer spending going to look like then?
What are you predicting?
I am predicting, this is just a prediction, and this is just my, I'm not going to rely upon, I'm not going to quote any sources or anything, I'm just as my gut. I think we're going to see a slowdown in spending. And I think that we are going to, unless here again we have some major policy change from the White House, where we're going to, all of a sudden we're going to start drilling again, open up the Keystone Pipeline. If we have a major policy shift in energy from the White House, then I see the consumer confidence increasing. And right now, consumer confidence is really low. And so I think that the impact of low consumer confidence hasn't trickled into the economy yet because it's summertime. Once you get past summertime, get past back to school spending, that's when I think we're going to see it.
Do you think it's going to pick back up? Right around the holidays, November, December?
I think the midterm elections in November is going to have an impact on that. I think that will have. I think if Republicans can take control of the House and the Senate, I think that will give. I think overall, people think that the Republicans, and this is just from the polls I've seen, are better on the economy than the Democrats. I don't know why that is. I don't want to get into the reasons why, because it's probably a wide range and probably somewhat subjective as opposed to objective. But I think, some of the policies, in my opinion, definitely favor Republicans. I think we need to get back to being energy independent. And I think that would, if we did that, I think that would greatly lift, over time, consumer confidence, because all that's going to trickle into the cost. Energy. The cost of energy and the cost to produce things, as it goes up, everybody's got to pay more. So if we can reduce our energy prices, it would bring down our overall cost. So I think if the Democrats would shift course on the energy policy, that could have a big impact on consumer confidence, and it may have a big impact on, are we going to feel like we're in a recession once we get past, I'll say, back to school time period. And that's, again, those are just my opinions, but. And I think there's some geopolitical things out there with the war in Russia. And what's with that can have an impact on, there's a lot of other, geopolitical things, and, that may have an impact on consumer confidence. But those geopolitical things aside, there's a lot we can do here in our country and our own decision making to really give the consumer that confidence they need to get out there and spend that money to keep the economy rolling along.
Yeah, consumer confidence, we don't have to talk too heavily on this. Just again, we've talked about it before off the podcast, but consumer confidence is one thing, but employee confidence seems to be a thing right now. People, it's like the employees don't have confidence to work for their employers anymore. People have a more frequent revolving door now. and employees just like, I mean, how often do your orders get messed up now? If you like go through, like, get your order, go out, order your food, order your drink, and it's wrong. Like, like it's almost like no one's trained anymore. They're hitting the floor so fast.
There is a lot of lack of stability, especially in a lot of these frontline service industries. And like you mentioned, getting your food, just customer service. It's some of these frontline service industries are such a rotation in the staffing. I think that as we've come off the COVID, the COVID stimulus money that so many people were getting, and unemployment, and people are having to get back to work, especially here in Florida. We were getting people back to work a lot quicker. So I think that overall, still a lot of transition. Still can't find employees. I think a lot of people are, there's such a lack of workforce, especially here in Florida, because we have been an open state, a free state, and so we've been busy. So if you go out to dinner, or you go out somewhere, especially on a weekend, and if you're in a metropolitan area, you may wind up, if you make a reservation, you may wind up with an hour or 2 hour wait just to get seated, or longer. Maybe you can't even get in because there's just lack of staffing. So again, I think it's gotten a little bit better as we moved away from COVID. I think we still have a long way to go just to get back to proper staffing in terms of levels. But get to your point, quality staffing levels, I think we're still a long way.
I take us way down a rabbit hole, sorry. A lot of questions. But now we're talking about employees. It kind of connects to something we spoke about earlier about how USAA and Amazon were kind of doing things with their money. So let's say it's towards the about mid-year, and I want to kind of like offset my taxes, kind of like trying to invest in my company. Am I able to do anything like amplify my workforce, or just for like 6 months and kind of lose money on overstaffing for a little while to offset my taxes? Or I'm able to buy like if I need, I could just buy a bunch of computers to mine Bitcoin or something. I don't know, but like, I got 6 months to blow some cash. What do you think about that?
So as we do tax planning with clients towards the end of the year, we never really so the top tax rate is 37%. That's if you're married or if you're single. Now, when you hit that level, it depends on if you're married or single. But the top tax rate is 37% currently. So if you're going to go out and spend money in your business, and you actually need to go out and spend money for assets that are going to make you money, I highly recommend doing it, especially if you're in that 37% bracket. But just to go out and spend money just to not pay taxes is not going to help you build your personal net worth or your balance sheet. So if you have, let's say you got some computers, you got some equipment that's 2 years old, you're having a good year, like I go out and buy all new equipment and all new computers, well, what you have is fully functional, works fine, and you go out and buy new stuff. By doing that, the most you're going to spend $1 with your vendor, the most you're going to save is 37 cents on the dollar. Now you're going to have a computer that's two years newer, but is it going to help you make you any more money than the one that you just got rid of that functioned just fine, or the equipment that you got rid of that functioned just fine? So it was a balance between saving money in taxes and building worth, building your net worth. If you're constantly spending all your money, if you don't pay taxes, it means you didn't make any money. So you can't build net worth unless you actually make money.
Right.
So it's a fine line, and so one of the things too I see people do when they're doing tax planning is at the end of the year they'll make a lot of moves or maneuvers, and there'll be a classic example. It happens at least once during the end of the year with our clients is they need a new vehicle. It happens in smaller businesses. They need a new vehicle for their business, a new work truck or a new work car, whatever. And it's going to be driven by the staff. They may have just some kind of construction business, some kind of service business where they have a fleet of vehicles. And when you go and talk to the dealership about buying it, and you have to finance it, typically if you're financing it in your business, you have to pay more money in terms of interest rate when you finance it through your business. If you buy it personally, you usually get a better interest rate. Well, and that's a great, here again, that's easy potentially to make the decision to, hey, I'm going to save 3% interest by buying it personally. I'll buy it personally. I'll save interest. I'll save money, and I won't be spending as much. The risk in doing that is if you now bought this work truck that you're going to have your staff driving and it's in your personal name. Now you have somebody else out there driving a vehicle in your personal name that if they get in an accident and there's a big lawsuit, they're going to, of course, sue your company, but they're also going to sue you because you are on the title. If you were to buy that truck in the business name and an accident happened, they're going to sue the business. Now, they may still try and sue you individually because that's typically where most business owners keep their net worth outside their business. So they want to get to whoever has the money. So they're going to try and sue you as the officer, as the director, as the manager of that business. But if they can't prove that you were negligent in the way you managed that business, then you can't be liable. So here again, it's very important that for asset protection reasons, when you're buying equipment, especially things that have a title to them, you definitely make sure you're buying it in the name of the company. Now, if you're a startup, and I had this conversation with someone the other day, if you're a startup, you're just starting in business and you need to buy a truck for your business, and you're not sure if you're going to make it or not, I'm not saying don't buy it in the name of the LLC. But here's what may happen. So if you started a business up, you're in business for 2 years, and you close at the end of 2 years. If you bought that truck or work vehicle in the name of the LLC, and you want to keep that truck or vehicle when you close down the LLC and put it back in your name, you may have to pay sales tax on that transfer to get it out of the company name into your personal name. And if there's a loan, you're going to get it refinanced as well because the LLC is going to go away. So
can't the business just sell it to someone for $1?
Well, the business can sell it to, it depends. Can't sell it to someone for $1, yes, but unless it's an arm's length transaction, if it's an arm's length transaction, you wouldn't sell it for less than fair market value. Mm-hmm. You're selling it to yourself. If you sell it from your LLC to yourself, here again, I don't know what the sales tax. I know basically if you were to sell a vehicle or anything that has a tag, basically whatever you sell it for is what you pay state sales tax on when the buyer pays that. If you own the LLC, you're basically transferring the title from your LLC to you. I don't know if there's sales tax on that transfer. Now I'm going to go with yes, but check with your local tax collector's office to make sure. But keep in mind, there's a loan on that vehicle. You have to get that loan refinanced as well because you're closing down your LLC.
Right.
That's going to be so here again. I'm not recommending if you're opening up a business to not put your vehicles or other assets in the name of the LLC. Just keep that in mind. If you have to close it down in 2 years, you got some extra work to do, maybe some extra fees to pay if you want to keep those assets when you close the business down.
Right. And you mentioned about how many cents to the dollar in regards to like you may purchasing like assets for your company.
Tax savings?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the top tax bracket is 37 cents.
Okay.
So if you're married filing joint, you'd be making over $600,000 in income, taxable income to be in that bracket. So typically most folks are probably going to be in the 22, 24 or so, 32% bracket. So even still, so if you're at 37% bracket and you're just buying assets to save money in taxes, it's a bad idea because you're still out the 63 cents. If you're in the 22% bracket, it's even more of a bad idea just to buy assets to save taxes because you're not building. Here again, at the end of the day, you can't live on tax savings or retirement. You have to live on equity and accumulation of wealth. So. Well,
towards the end of the year, that's just buying like assets for your company to offset, say, taxes going forward. Is there anything different? Is there any better places to spend money? If you how much can you write off on your sales team, like your staff? Like how much of that does it affect taxes?
So here again, if you're having sales conferences, you can take your staff to sales conferences. You can have sales meetings. You can have sales training.
Just their
hourly.
You
can have bonuses. You can have all kinds of stuff to give more money back to your staff if you want to do things that way. I had a thought as you were talking. It went right out of my mind as I started to give my answer to your question.
Well, no, I was thinking, like, what if someone they haven't paid much in taxes for the year so far, and they're like, what if they just decided to hire like 12 people for like a sales team to amplify sales, because that risk is kind of offset a bit by the fact they have to spend some of this money anyways.
If you can get them, if your sales team can at least produce some money to cover their salaries, then it just depends. Every situation is different. But I just want to make sure the listeners don't think that I'm getting to. Let me just go spend money to save money in taxes.
Right. It's really important. Don't listen to me.
It's good.
Don't. This is the CPA. Don't.
It's definitely good to spend money if you need what you're going to be buying, and if what you're going to buy is going to basically save you some money, make you more efficient, make you more productive, then definitely want to make sure that you take advantage of those expenditures. That's going to, and sometimes I've got business owners that, it may not make me a whole lot more money. I may even make less. It may just be, I may break even, but I want to spend this $10,000 because it's gonna make my work life better. It's something that I want to have in my office. At my office, I may want to buy a new work truck to ride around in. And do I need? I'm going to use Ford as an example because I drive Fords. So I may be able to, if I had a construction company, maybe a Ford Lariat, F-150 Lariat is all I need to do my job. You know what? I want a Platinum, or I want a Limited, because it's going to cost me $25,000, $30,000 more dollars, but I want it, and I'm going to get to write it off. Plus, I'll be making money with it. I don't need it, but it's just going to. I go to work every day. I work hard. I want that truck to ride around in because it's going to make me feel better. It's going to be more enjoyable. Maybe go ahead and do that. But so those are situations where, as an owner, you may want to spend money that I don't want to say it's a bad purchase, but it may not be as productive as, here again, or may as efficient as buying that Lariat or the XLT version, but still get the job done. So as owners, we have to balance out, being cost effective, being efficient, being tax efficient, but also, especially, most entrepreneurs work a lot more than 40 hours a week. So if I'm working all the time, I at least want to enjoy my environment, whether it be a nice truck, be a nice office, whatever the case may be, nice technology, or all the above. So there are some. It's every decision isn't always about maximizing tax savings or maximizing efficiency. That we have to have some, personal enjoyment and spend some money on ourselves wisely for doing what we do every day.
It's our first podcast. I don't think we did so bad for it.
You did great.
Yeah, I don't think we even have a name for this, though. It's still to be determined.
I think you're right.
Yeah, we didn't name it. We got the mics. We got everything set up, and there's still no name, but I think there's a lot of good stuff that we talked about today. One thing I remember, one quick question, and I hope I don't derail your podcast so much with my parry and jousting questions, because I would say a portion of them are facetious for the most part, but I think there's people out there who are actually considering what I consider to be joking. So I bring it up anyways. So.
No, it's good, because it's amazing how many. I've done this over 28 years now, close to 30, and it's sometimes the questions that you get, or the and here again, it's not that people. It's what I find is I always hear, I heard this, I heard that, and lots of times as people, we've all played that game in school as somebody, and I say school being junior high or elementary, whatever it is, where somebody starts a comment or something, and it goes down the line. By the time it gets to the end, it's altogether different. It's altogether different than what it started out as, and so people come in with questions. I don't think they're bad questions. It's just interesting how. I'm sure that they've got information second, third, 15th hand down the line, and it gets reinterpreted. And so by the time they get here, the questions they ask, it's not, they're not bad questions, but it's the train of thought is definitely not going to work for them. But it's good to come in and ask questions, because that's how you get smart.
Right. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, you were, and this is hypothetical, not to myself, for anybody I know. Okay, this is just straight hypothetical.
Good disclosure.
Doesn't
Good
exist.
disclosure.
Nothing exists. This isn't real. Okay, this. Let's say somebody out there was renting property. All right, and they're selling this property now for a major profit, and they have 6 digits of capital gains.
Okay.
Okay, but they didn't live there for 2 years. Is there any way they can fudge that information? Or anything to get away with not paying those capital gains?
Is it their personal residence, or is it investment property?
Well, what if to their benefit, they never really classified it as any kind of anything beyond, even though they rented it out, I don't think they ever classified it as rental.
I think you did say renting it out when you started the questions. I missed that part of it. I missed that information. So basically it's going to be, so the IRS can, if they audited the return and someone's trying to say this was our personal residence for two out of the last 5 years.
You go to jail.
If the IRS wanted to, they could go back and take a look at, okay, show me your power bills for this 2 year period.
Yeah.
And if the power bills aren't for that address, And that's strike one. Where is show me your voter registration card, show me your driver's license, show me other mail that you have, all those things. Especially now, if you're in a little more difficult if you're in the same town or county, to talk to get into. Show me your, where do you go to church at? Show me a library card. But mail is always one. Driver's license, voter registration, power bills, utility bills, all indicate, where you live. There are ways to get out. I think we talked about them earlier. A 1031 exchange. If it is an investment property, you can kind of kick the can down the road. At this point, you can't get out of paying the tax, unless you own the property when you pass away, and then based on the current tax law, your heirs get a step up in basis to the current fair market value. So you can beat the tax man that way, but you have to hold the property until you die, or you have to have keep doing 1031 exchanges. And the property that you ultimately exchange into, you die with, and then you beat the tax man that way. So this kind of wraps up this podcast session, and we want to thank everybody for listening. Next time we get together, we're going to talk more about real estate. Also, if you've been paying attention to the national news, you've been hearing about this new, stimulus plan that's being proposed by Democrats, and it's got Manchin support in the Senate, and so it's probably going to roll to the Senate and the House, and it gets signed by the White House. But one of the things in there that's been in other stimulus plans is a big amount of money being set aside to, rebuild and rebuild and recapitalize the IRS, rebuild in terms of staffing and recapitalize with technology and hardware. So we're tracking that very carefully in terms of this, what that looks like, and so we hope to have next podcast a little more detail. But at some point, if this bill passes, and if there is a big IRS allocation, I bet we're going to talk about that and what our clients can do and listeners can do to better prepare themselves for future, I'm going to say increased enforcement, which means audits.
And maybe next week, Randy could introduce me.
I am so sorry. This is my business partner, Brennan Lesser, here at the office, my marketing business partner. I'm working with him for about 2 years now, and I apologize for not introducing you. It did slip my mind, but Brendan helps us out here at the office, our CPA for other affiliated businesses with this podcast, all the videos we shoot for the website and for online advertising. Also, our website, our social media presence, SEO, and other things. So. We'd definitely like to see if you have any marketing needs in these areas I mentioned. Please give us a call here at the office, and we'll get you in contact with Brennan, and you guys can work out a plan to help your business out.